Successful Minds with Patricia Barnowski-Schneider, the show that takes you around the world to share interviews with some of the most successful and relevant people on the planet. Hear their stories and get the most important business lessons they have learned on their road to success and get exclusive advice on how to implement their success into your life and business. Successful Minds with Patricia Barnowski-Schneider is brought to you by the Strategic Advisor Board and your host, Patricia Barnowski-Schneider.
Hello and welcome back to Successful Minds. I'm your host, Patty Baranowski-Schneider. Today I'm joined by Daksh Asija, co-founder at Procuzy. So welcome, Daksh. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Thank you, Patricia, for having me. It's a great pleasure to speak to you and, just trying to understand different perspective across the globe. So I come from a business family from a small town in India, Lucknow. And it's a third generation business which my father and my brother are currently running. So always had the knack of doing something of my own. Even while I was interning for Morgan Stanley, I started a cloud kitchen with my current co-founder Arjun, right, which was majorly catering to midnight snackers, right. And through that execution of cloud kitchen, which was the first business, not exactly a business, it was a side gig, right. That's how we were introduced to the entrepreneurship journey, and we got into it.
Very nice. It's a big leap from Morgan Stanley. So now I guess, speaking of that, can you share the moment or inspiration that led you to the transition from working at Morgan Stanley and Happay to founding your own venture, Procuzy?
Sure. So, the journey has been very, I would say, it was a different scale altogether, right? So Morgan Stanley is a fintech firm where I was working as a backend developer, right? So the things were very different there, very, very process driven, very slow moving, because the safety and privacy was the utmost priority in a fintech firm, right? I mean, it is. So, I worked there for 1.5 years, roughly 18 months, and learned a lot about finance, learned a lot about, portfolio holdings and fee billing solutions and all of it. And it was more around processes, discipline, the largest scale I've ever seen, right? Than to Happay, which was, I would not say a very small, but a, medium-sized closely knitted, team, where all of us were on the same floor, including the CEO, the business team, the tech team, product team, and everyone. And we used to interact with everyone. The tone of conversation was casual as compared to Morgan. Even the, formals versus casual wear, that was the difference. And then even, understanding business or understanding various other metrics, which was not a part of my KRA, was also very easy in Happy, right? Because when all of us are on the same floor, things are pretty much easy, to understand what's going in the other department, what's right, what's wrong, that's going on in the other department.
Right. Yeah, no, it definitely makes it a lot easier, everybody in one page, because if you have to go through different floors or everything's communicated by email, it's like, are they even doing this? I don't even know.
True.
Good. Now tell us, from H3 Mart to Procuzy, what prompted the rebranding from H3 Mart to Procuzy, and how has this shift influenced the direction and goals of the business?
Sure. So, Procuzy is altogether different product. I would say Procuzy is from the learnings of H3 Mart. H3 Mart was basically our first startup where we were trying to become a managed marketplace or an aggregator of manufacturers, right? And we went to a decent scale, but of course, because of certain problems, we had to wrap up H3 Mart. And since we work very closely with a lot of manufacturers in H3 Mart down there, we had a lot of learnings and a lot of interactions, and that's where we understood what are the major pain points of larger manufacturers. And that's how, Procuzy was started, where Procuzy today is a SaaS for mid-sized manufacturers. Of course, the vision is to convert their factories into smart factories.
Okay. Yeah, I was going to say, explain a little bit about what Procuzy is. Yeah, good stuff.
So I think you asked one more question, like what has been, the shift and all of it, right?
Right.
Shall I answer that, or
sure?
Shall
Yeah. Yeah, no, go for it.
I really want to, I'm excited to mention this. What we've seen, when we started H3 Mart, it was our first startup, right? So the way we were operating, the learning, because I and Arjun both come from tech background, right? So uh, me doing sales from the tech background was very, very new and I mean, very overwhelming, right? So, I mean, when you're sitting in front of a laptop, the rejections are just the code and the syntax, right? But when you have to speak to so many people, every call is kind of a rejection. I mean,
Right.
100 calls you make, probably 5 or 7 speak to you politely or, different experience altogether. So it has been overwhelming over the period of time. I would say today I've learned sales to an extent where I'm able to sell, right? But it has been very, very overwhelming so far. But having said that, the results have been very fruitful, right? I mean, from the pivot of H3 Mart to Procuzy, from the learnings of these manufacturers, today we work with a lot of large manufacturers, including brands like Marico, which is at more than, maybe 5-10 billion dollars of revenue, then probably M Caffeine, Duke's Wafers, and maybe yeah, hundreds of others, right? And we initially just started with foods and beverages, and probably your pharma and other categories. Today we have more than 7, 8 category or segments on our platform as different manufacturers.
Oh, very good. Yeah, it's all a learning curve along the way. You just jumped in head first.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, what are the biggest challenges mid-sized manufacturers face in digitalizing their operations, and how does Procuzy address the challenges?
Okay. So, okay. So, Patricia, how I see is, manufacturing is a very, very complex process where very limited resources are present, right? And having said that, operations is the strongest and I believe the only moat in the manufacturing segment, right? The faster you deliver, the better you deliver, the better quality you assure, you have a better distribution network, right?
Right.
And that's where, as a manufacturer, uh, for first few years your entire focus is on your top lines. You want to first increase your business, then hire more people, then build a larger warehouse and all of it. But when you reach a certain scale, right, and that's exactly where ICP comes in. When you reach a certain scale, uh, uh, how I see it is you are operating at a decent scale with a team size of 10, 15 plus, right? And that's where managing so much data over spreadsheets or without a digitized system gets very, very, I would say, loss making business, or a leakage business, right? Where you're not able to track your different departments. All your departments are working in silos. You have so many wastages going on in your purchase or while production are happening, which you're unable to track. Plus, the biggest thing, as an owner, you're never able to forecast your revenue or your demand for next few quarters, right? And that's exactly where Procuzy comes in. If you're a manufacturer sitting at a turnover of maybe $5 million plus to up to around $100 million, where you have a team size of 10 plus, and you're, frustrated working over spreadsheets, Procuzy aims to, digitize your entire factory floor, the entire manufacturing process, making sure wastages are reduced, and eventually, you drive some ROI from the platform by, helping you predict your revenue or demand.
Nice. Yeah, everybody just wants to make it simple and just help me get from point A to B, That's good. Now, can you discuss a specific example where Procuzy it significantly improved operational efficiency for a client, and what changes were implemented and what was the outcome?
Okay, let me just think of a client. Okay, so I'll take an example of the oldest clients. It's a client. It's a food manufacturer at a decent scale of around maybe $15 million of annual turnover. Right. For them, the major struggles were tracking their batches. So they procure the goods or the raw materials for to be a finished food product in different weeks or different days. Right. They can't procure all the raw materials in one go because perishability is involved, right? So that's where tracking their different batches in which they procure to create a finished good was very difficult, right? The pricing of tracking those batches to create a weighted average mean or the average price of all the batches were very difficult. Then tracking the perishability, that how much of is it about to expire, how much of it has expired, that was very difficult, right? And beyond that, they were not able to track or reduce the wastages. What I mean by that is, let's say to produce x amount of final finished good, you are consuming Y tons of raw materials, right? And that is getting produced in 10 days. Now, what after Procuzy getting in and they using Procuzy for more than 6 months, 8 months, they were able to produce that same X amount in 5% lesser than, I mean, Y minus 5%, and 10 days got reduced to 8.5 days, right? So there's a lot of utilization of the factory or throughput of the factory which has increased. You're able to deliver 1.5 days faster to your customer. You're able to reduce your costs by 5%, right, for the same amount of production that you're doing, right? So that's where the ROI was, fantastically delivered to the client.
Very, very nice. I know it's hard to predict, and I guess that's where you need somebody, because it's always hard when you're doing the work. It's hard to predict or even go backwards and say, okay, well, what went wrong? How long did it? But if you have something digital where it says it calculates it all for you and says, well, look, here's the big picture, so that's actually really good. So tell us, in your view, what are the key components of an effective digital transformation strategy for supply chain management in today's manufacturing sector?
Can you repeat digital transformation for?
Yeah, what are the key components of an effective digital transformation strategy for supply chain management in today's manufacturing sector?
So I'll tell you, I'll answer this question in a format where, how we are planning the entire strategy or the entire, roadmap of Procuzy, right, down the lane. So first things first, we see automations as the most important part, right? When you start scaling as a manufacturer, it gets very difficult for you, to streamline your operations that have been in the base for quite a long time or a decade now, right? So first thing is, of course, automations where multiple tools or your multiple apps that you're using are connected. For an example, integration with Slack, Facebook, or WhatsApp to notify your customers or suppliers or engage with them about the order status, either ways, right? Second probably would be end-to-end visibility, which every owner or every CXO or a finance controller loves, right? Even if I'm not in my factory for, let's say, 75% of the days in a month, I'm able to get end-to-end visibility. How much procurement is happening, how much sales is happening, how much scrap is being produced on a day-to-day basis, how many units are sold, how many units are produced, everything, right? Second very important thing, and that's where Procuzy is trying to create a dent, right? How we see, Patricia, I'll take a step back. I might get a bit off track from your question for a while,
okay.
but the point is, to help the viewers understand why the ERP market has not been able to give an ROI to mid-sized manufacturers so far, right? The biggest thing is ERP so far has been a data entry tool where you enter data on a day-to-day basis. You get some dashboards or pie charts or maybe some histograms out of it, and that's the end point or the dead end, right? Exactly, that's where Procuzy is trying to extend the space, creating a dent there, where you want to not just give you dashboards, you want to create a lot of intelligence from there. You want to make sure that you derive a good impact, good ROI from the platform. Because if you're able to if we are able to deliver better ROI, we're also able to increase our business with yours, right? As simple as that. So data-driven decision making is very important. Now, a very quick example of data-driven decision making is, let's say I get 10x the size of orders I produce on a day-to-day basis as a manufacturer, right? Now, for me to confirm that order, I need to, work on it backwards, where I need to understand who will be the set of suppliers who will fulfill the raw materials for this particular sales order which I've got. How many machines do I require? How many labors on each and every machine do I require, right? Because that's the mode, that's the operational efficiency every manufacturer is looking for. And that's what Procuzy provides. So let's say you get an order of no matter what quantity, you can always reconcile from Procuzy with an automation that how much is in the warehouse, how much more needs to be ordered, what the labor count I have at the moment, right? How many machines and which machine is looked after by which labor. And not just here, we also go beyond to help you understand what should be your production planning so that you can forecast your demand. And that's also where Procuzy helps. That let's say in future you can expect this much amount of demand, and for this you need to procure raw materials from these set of suppliers. Out of them, let's say this will not fulfill in time, this supplier will fulfill in time, this supplier has a fill rate of 50%, so you need to figure out another supplier, all of that, right?
Nice.
So sorry, I just went off the track to give
That's
some
okay.
context. Yeah. So coming back, of course, as I said, data-driven decision making is one of the important aspect, right? Then probably automations, of course, I mentioned. IoT or robotics is something, we're keeping at the last leg, where you're able to understand the throughput of your machine. How many machines are in a downtime mode? How many machines are up and running? Let's say in a shift one, an owner needs to understand if for 8 hours the machine was supposed to run to deliver 100 units to be produced, the machine only ran for 6 hours, hence 60 units were produced, right? And of course, not to forget privacy and security across the platform to secure their data. That's one of the most important aspect. Reason being, the recipes or the material information that is there on the platform is very, very uh, I would say highly private data, right? That's the moat. That's another moat of the manufacturer. Their taste, their chemical composition, and all of it. So we have a lot of masking and cyber security, reforms on the platform. Then, of course, scalability and flexibility. Now, what I mean by scalability and flexibility, again, very important aspect here is, if you see, Patricia, we are focusing on the mid-size segment, right? 5 million to $100 million of annual turnover. We do not go for smaller manufacturers, unfortunately, and we do not want to tap into the larger manufacturers or top of the pyramid, because we do not want to lock horns with large enterprise players who are already $1 billion revenue company. The reason why we will always be focused on the mid-size segment is because we understand they require a lot of customizations, which will make their system better, right? Larger enterprises do provide those customizations, but at a bomb price, right? Maybe $500,000, $700,000, and so on. We provide all those customizations, making sure all those advanced technologies at just 1/10 of the cost at which larger enterprises provide, right? So that's what I'm trying to say, that flexibility is very important for a mid-sized manufacturer as well, because eventually they also aspire to become a large manufacturer.
No, I mean, it definitely makes sense because, everybody, you have different departments that have, they're in charge. One is in charge of this, one is in charge of that. Now it's just in one, things don't get lost in translation from what that department said and this department said. So it definitely seems to streamline everything. So that's good.
Correct.
Yeah. Now, having been exposed to both startups and MNCs, what unique perspectives have you gained that shaped your approach to building Procuzy?
So, as I mentioned, right, I mean, MNCs have a different ball game and a different, takeaway altogether. I mean, give you a different takeaway altogether. And, startups, of course, have a different ball game altogether. Pardon my language. But this is my take, of course. Startups are not for the weak-hearted people, right? I mean, there's so much of pressure. There is so much of anxiety. Every day gets overwhelming at times, right? I, as a founder, have never seen a single day where things are not tough, right? But of course, these tough moments create a tougher person out of you, right? So how just to kind of draw parallel lines between MNCs and startups. MNCs, as I said, is majorly for understanding processes, working in a more disciplined environment, working in a more, process-oriented environment with, for every action item, there's an SOP involved, right? Approvals involved and various other parts. But you also get to see the scale, the very, very large scale on day one of your joining, right? The I would say disadvantage is you do not get through that scale, right? Or you do not get to see what's the cause or the struggles around those scaling metrics, right? You're just a small part of that engine, very, very small part, right? Sometimes negligible. Whereas in startups, it's a different ball game altogether, right?
Yeah.
Being a techie, being a designer, you get to see what's happening on the business side. As a sales guy, you get to see what exactly the tech looks like, what exactly is the tech roadmap, what exactly is the technology that we are revamping or building across, right? So of course, you also, and this is again my personal belief. I think that if you run, I mean, if you work in a startup, of course, with a smaller team at 20 to around 100, you also develop a lot of business acumen. Even as a techie, even as a designer, even as a marketing guy, you build a lot of business acumen, right? Because many times small teams are interacting with business guys or customers and various other parts, right?
Right.
So I mean, if I do a face off, and of course we are also competing with a lot of MNCs, right? And every startup is trying to disrupt or kind of create a new strategy which an MNC has failed to execute, or they're big enough to get into the smaller executions, right?
Right.
So it's like 20 people competing with maybe 5,000 people. So the war goes like this, right?
Yeah.
So it's less about the amount of team size. It's more about the aspiration and how many people, I mean, how many brains are working.
Yeah. And, it's crazy, but in the world of business, at the end of the day, everybody wants to know what's going to make my life easier, what's not going to break the
100%.
bank, but how much it's going to cost me. And they just want simplicity, because running a business is a lot of work. There's a lot of legs to this octopus. And it's just like, okay, how can we streamline it, make it easy and not
Yeah,
cost me a fortune? So,
for
yeah,
sure.
yeah,
Agree.
nice. Now, how does Procuzy work with stakeholders and owners to ensure that the digital transformation aligns with their vision and business goals?
So, I mean, we do multiple, activities around that. First things first, 100% of our customers have interacted with me. I mean, sorry, rather, I have interacted with them. And I make sure once in 45 days or, 60 days, I call each one of them, right? Sometimes over Google Meet. I would say most of them have my number as well. So they also call me directly. Sometimes it gets very, difficult to avoid, even if you have to, because, they'll end up calling even for smaller things. But yeah,
Yeah.
that I make sure that I know what's happening around each and every customer. Of course, it's a very small scale, so that's my KRA 101. But
Right.
even on a larger scale, I believe, because the larger founders or the more experienced or successful founders I've spoken to, everybody is like, for a larger business, you have to make sure that you are working with customers, right? And you don't build things sitting in an AC office meeting
Right.
room. You go to their factory, you visit them, understand what's the new struggle in your current feature or in your current product, and try to revamp it, right? Because the moment you stop listening to customers, you're dead already, right?
Right.
And another very important thing, Patricia, which I want to mention from the stakeholders engagement point of view, uh, how we see this is, the faster time to value you deliver to a enterprise customer, the more hooked they are, and the better champions they become for you, even in terms of referrals, right? We get so many referrals from our existing customers, right? There are customers who could not get activated in the first 6 months, but from our intent, from our way of pushing them to use the platform, today some of them have even come back, that we are not going to use any other platform because we see how empathizing you guys are. So that has also happened, right? Now, one very important thing which I've recently, I mean, that's in the pipeline, of course, but what we're trying to build is a board of customers, right? So there's a board of investors, right? So we are trying to build something similar, board of customers, where we get some highly professional and good scale, good knowledgeable customers on our customer board, and we kind of experiment with them or try to get their feedback on a very brutal format, that we are planning to roll out this feature, we are planning to bring in let's say this new pricing module and all of it, and see what exactly their feedback looks like.
It actually almost sounds like a, what do they call those? Focus group, where, you have people come in and you try out different things and they give you your feedback. Yeah, that's actually pretty smart. This way you're not using your actual customers as the guinea pigs. You're kind of,
Yeah.
yeah, nice. Now, how do you envision the future of smart factories, and what role will Procuzy play in shaping this future?
Okay. So, of course, Procuzy is completely aligned, with Industry 4.0 moving towards Industry 5.0. And the vision is very clear to convert factories into smart factories, right? Now, how we kind of imagine the future of smart factories is basically robotics and IoT heavy involvement, right? Where
Yeah.
you get to see the boring part or the difficult part over the app immediately. Where a lot of other startups, of course, we are not an IoT centric, app for manufacturers, but we're also collaborating with a lot of IoT, centric startups which work with manufacturers, right? Where the idea is you get to understand the machine activity, throughput, and all of it. Second thing, of course, and again, my personal belief could be wrong, but eventually, the localized softwares or the legacy softwares will start, you know, vanishing from the market, right?
Right.
Reason being, with the new age technology, open APIs or, new integrations which these manufacturers require, right? Post COVID, most of these manufacturers have moved to, make to order than make to stock. People want to store very less in their factory, right? They
Right.
want to, procure stocks or raw materials every time after the order is confirmed, right? So the legacy softwares have a lot of limitations in terms of automations or flexibility or customizations or integrations or various other parts, right? And that's where Procuzy uh, is trying to grab that opportunity of 65% market being led by the legacy softwares, right?
Right.
Especially in the APAC region. So that's what our goal is, to make sure that factories operate in a digitized format where everything is available digitally, be it who's present in the factory, who's absent, what
Mhm.
has been the throughput of the machine, how much wastage happened in a day, and through computer vision, trying to understand which machine is due for maintenance, which machine has some issues, and various other parts.
Yeah, I mean it's crazy, but you almost need this in today's world. I mean, you can't just rely. I mean, people make mistakes if they're writing stuff down. I mean, and it
Correct.
just having everything in one spot is really key. Yeah. So,
Agreed.
yeah. So now, reflecting on your entrepreneurial journey, what have been some of the biggest challenges you faced, and what key lessons have you learned?
Hmm. Interesting. That gives me a flashback of my entire 4 years. So I think the first things first, which is of course the most important part, is your team, right? So how I see it is, your team, makes or breaks your company. As
Yeah.
simple as that, right? If you hire the right people, the energetic and the visionary people, uh, who are able to sit with you and brainstorm with you, where the founder should feel the dumbest in the room, right?
Right.
If that's what I read somewhere also, and I completely, have absorbed it and believe in it, that
Right.
if founder is the smartest in the think tank room, probably the startup will never become big, right?
Right.
uh, Second thing, apart from team, I would say, is execution that matters, right? Especially I can comment from the B2B segment, because both the startups have been in the B2B segment. Uh, Distribution is something that matters the most, right? It's less about product, it's less about perfection, it's more about distribution, because eventually, you know, you can perfection is a very, very relative term. That's how I
Yeah.
see it, right? So today or tomorrow, no matter how much effort you put in, there will be someone who will always, throw, stones at your
Right.
product, right? Or at your company, whatsoever, right? So, but the thing is, the distribution is something that, if cracked, eventually creates a better product out of it. Uh, Third thing which I would want to mention, which I still follow, is frugality, right? Uh, we don't have to have a flashy office, and by we I mean early stage founders. We don't need to have a lot of burn. until we figure out the PMF. Of course, this is my learning, not trying to,
Right.
uh, uh, become a kind of a trainer or
Yeah.
something, but just talking about from my learnings that frugality helps a lot, right? I mean, if you are frugal, if you do not spend lavishly on office or on parties or various other activities, that money gets very useful for you when you are in your tough times.
Yeah, I mean, but it's true. Like, I think I did some research one time, like Elon Musk, Bill Gates, like all these guys. I mean, they live very frugal. I mean, they don't wear fancy clothes. But so many people just try to look the part, but you have to get there first. Yeah, so I agree
I'm
with you
I'm
100%.
glad, in the same podcast, you mentioned Bill Gates and Elon Musk
Yeah.
also.
Well, I follow everybody. Now tell us, based on your experience, what advice would you give to aspiring entrepreneurs looking at digitalized transitional industries?
Uh, very, I would say, no, I mean, I'm still learning, right? So, I mean, not an expert to advise someone, but yeah, and I will, speak from my personal learnings and my personal experience. It could be right, it could be wrong. But the first things first is, and this is what we follow in Procuzy, right? Do not go by the books, right? Or do not follow the existing playbooks that have been there, right? I mean, especially while if you want to revolutionize the traditional market, right?
Right.
If that's how I see it, Patricia. So let's say you are a very prominent podcaster, right? If there would have been a playbook for how to increase your views to 10,000 in a week,
Right.
everybody would have
Me
been a
too.
podcaster,
Right.
right? And that's what I've seen a lot of people make mistakes. Even I have done that. Let's not let Google tell us. Of course we can do our research and go by the gut feeling and take a decision, especially in the early days when we are focusing on traditional markets or trying to disrupt very old age markets, especially like ours. Going by the books will never solve the problem, right? We have to understand with the customer, sitting with the customer, uh, through our gut feelings. A lot of times I take, I would say, a lot of decisions through my gut feelings, right? And luckily, when I say lot here, of course, many of them have been successfully driven, right? So that helps me a lot, right? And another thing is, what I also believe is, we have never read online about how to activate a client faster, right? So that's very important, that how to provide time to value faster has been derived from our own experience after speaking to clients, right? So in a nutshell, what I'm trying to say is, don't surround yourself with boundaries. The boundary could be like, let's say for Procuzy, the boundary could be like, no, ERP space can never be, transformed. It's a 20-year, 30-year-old space. SAP is already sitting in the market. QuickBooks is already operating for the lower
Right.
segment. Why do you even need to get into the ERP space, right? Figure out something else. Now that's a boundary. And there's no point in creating a boundary. Test it through your gut feeling, figure it out if it works, speak to the customer, speak to the stakeholders and all of the people possible, and just go for it. As simple as that, right? And the best way I would suggest to build for a traditional industry, especially for the mid-size segment that we are trying to build, is create your own playbooks, right? So one thing is, since our journey inception, right, in Procuzy, we have always created our own playbooks. And what's the aha moment when McKinsey, when you're trying to read a report by McKinsey or Bloomberg about
Right.
certain SOPs that you're trying to build, that you have built for the past few months, and your aha moment is when they kind of say that this is how you should build it, right?
Right.
So that's where you believe, wow, we've tried to do something good, or we've done something decent enough, right?
Right. Yeah, it's funny because I agree 100% with when somebody says, like, I love a challenge. So when someone says, oh, this has always been done this way, you can't be done. Well, now you just
Exactly.
challenged me. So, and think about it, if it hasn't been done, well, where do you stand when you finally make it
Right.
happen? You're right up there. So it's like, until you've tried everything, I mean, obviously, if it's not costing you trillions of dollars to try to find a way, but I mean, if you were able to, get your team and think about it and figure out a way, and it is true, because what happens well, what works for one company doesn't always work for everybody else. So you can't, you could take kind of a census of what you read and whatever the playbook is, but you have to make it your own, because it doesn't, every client's different, every business is different. So what works for one may not work for you.
Every mind is different. I mean, if you could see the current companies also, right? I mean, the larger companies that have been built, they've not followed a playbook. I mean, even if they have, let's say, copied an idea, or if they have, executed the same idea, their playbook could be completely different to what, the existing one or, a decade-old company has executed.
Yeah, 100%. Now, anything else you want to talk about that we didn't cover already? Anything going on? Anything big?
So I think we have had a decent discussion around, right? First of all, thank you so much, for making me walk through all the memory lanes, right? And now I'm going back to my 4-year-old journey when we just started out with the cloud kitchen and all of it. But no, it was an amazing time, right? From there, we have come here, we have learned a lot and all of it. But yeah, one thing, I really want to mention, of course, at the moment we are in India and Middle East market, and we are also, expanding towards Latin America, majorly towards the US region, where the vision is to convert factories into smart factories, of course. And we want to make sure that we work closer with the clients, we understand their requirements and deliver a product which has, never seen such an impact, right? I mean, the customer has never seen such an impact. We want to make sure that, what larger enterprises has given to the top of the pyramid, we give all those advanced functionalities for the mid-size segment.
Okay. So who would be, I guess we're going to include your contact info also, but who would be your ideal client that, we want to, if it's not me personally, who can you basically introduce you to?
So anyone who would be a manufacturer or, manages their inventory warehouses and, has a lot of, stocks moving in and out, or products moving in and out from the factory or warehouse, and is looking to, streamline their processes from the Excel sheets to a tool like Procuzy, which will be the next big thing from India.
Okay. And like I said, I'm going to include your contact info, but I guess just tell people how they could get a hold of you or learn more about you.
Sure, definitely. Thank you so much, Patricia, for that.
Sure. Is there a website that you want to tell people to go to?
Yeah, so we are at www.procuzy.com.
Okay.
And, you can reach out to me also at Daksh, DAKSH, @procuzy.com.
Nice. Well, thank you again for being on the show. Again, that was Daksh Asija. So thanks for listening to Asija. Yes. Thanks again for listening to Successful Minds with Patty B. Never miss an episode by subscribing to the channel. So thank you again.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to Successful Minds with your host, Patricia Barnowski-Schneider. Please leave your feedback and visit strategicadvisorboard.com to get the latest and greatest business advisement on the planet. Follow us on social media for updates, and we'll see you on the next episode.